Welcome to AURN Digital's Roundtable on Black Rock. My name is Child Coleman and I'm an artist.
My name is Nia I'man Smith and I'm the Black Connection.
My name is Bruce Mack. I'm a composer.
My name is Reginald Duvivier and I am a punk.
So, what is Afro-Punk in the canon of Black music history?
I would say it is a continuum in the rebelliousness in Black music and what we've already created. Afro-Punk really is an extension of what folks like Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix, Sly, the Family Stone, James Brown, but particularly those who are just straight out rebels have done. And I think Afro-Punk is presenting a new form, or new forms I should say, because there's not just one form, that's the interesting thing. I hear a lot of different forms and formats for songs to be created in, which makes me feel like I think it might be time for what people are actually composing, who people consider to be Afro-Punk artists, what they're actually composing may need to have some analysis now, because I think those structures and new ideas or the way of laying things out need to be looked at, and I think that in itself will give it a longevity. Because I've listened to, I remember the first, I guess it was an EP of Janelle Monáe.
Right.
And I was doing a series on Taint Radio for a while, which is an internet collective of folks from around the country, around the world actually, are archivists and audiophiles producing music as DJs. And I ran that each song, I think, for about several weeks. I gave like about 2 weeks of the song, and I was really into the composition of it. The attitude was there, the angst and the energy was new and fresh, but it was those structures that I was listening. I said, it sounds a little bit like some of those progressive R&B things, but it's definitely different. So I think it has an important role, and I think it really it'll start to stand out more in that canon once we start to really analyze the songs themselves. And I think give it some kind of play, really put it in some kind of rotation of our own, creating some kind of like radio program or internet radio program that really pushes it and supports it solely, like in the same way that jazz radio exists.
Exactly.
Here we have punk or Afro-Punk radio where only that is played, not to eliminate anything, but so that we give it a chance, to give it that focus, and we can start really looking at the compositions, the effort and the work that people are really putting in that music.
And I feel like it's weird. It's almost like every couple of years, every decade or two, there's a reset. So it's the idea of where you had you had your Chuck Berry, and then you had a shift there where now his rock and roll is this idea of just guitars and drums. And you have a couple of decades later where something like Jimi Hendrix comes out there. Hey, heavy metal, here's a new, electric guitar, crazy riffs. A couple of decades later, you guys are doing very simple, very simple riffs played quickly, here's Bad Brains. And even go back to Janelle Monáe, it was like, you guys are doing R&B this way, here's a little shift as far as that's concerned. And I think it just kind of goes back to the idea of a pattern of where, we're creators, where every couple of years it requires, and I'll say alternative only because at that time there's a mainstream sense of Black culture, but it requires somebody to go out there and be like, y'all doing it this way, how about we just do it a little this way? And then from that point, people pick up in this 5 years, because you can make the argument now, like a lot of what Janelle Monáe, and it's not even Janelle Monáe, where I could imagine let's say bands from a couple of years ago, like the internet, I saw it online, they gave props to Jay Davey, who they were a little bit off kilter, a little doing R&B a little differently, and it just kind of builds where you kind of require the idea of Afro-Punk, those kids, not necessarily in those punk rock sense, but in a DIY, looking at it differently, art kind of sense, where it's like, you guys are doing it this way, how about you guys do it this way instead, and then eventually it reverberates, and then, that's the way music looks like 5 years later.
And Bruce, speaking to this idea of the continuum, I think in shaping this, this Afro-Punk station is also really thinking about like the lineage and, as you're speaking to, where it is that this work is emerging from inside of the Black musical canon, whether it be, coming from Chuck Berry or coming from J. Davy, but then also thinking about just us as an African people, thinking about this rebellious spirit being connected to maroonage and connected to folks like Harriet Tubman and how that emerges as a part of, this Afro-Punk aesthetic, and building those bridges and those connections, I think would really help and really having the music supported as it needs to be supported, analyzed as it needs to be analyzed, and really given the respect and more of a listenership.
True. I totally agree with that. A lot of folk often think that, when you're playing, and it has been a general thought about rock being very simple.
Right.
Back in the day, I know we're way past that now, but people have thought of that in that way. People have thought of particular artists who are doing these what they consider simple forms of music in that same way. But just mentioning Bad Brains for long time had been known to do Return to Forever covers, note for note.
Right.
So a simple song is not an easy thing to do. It's very hard to be simple. A lot of times.
Songcraft is hard.
Songcraft
you have three
really
chords
hard.
to play with. How do you make a song?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you create energy in a few moments?
Right.
In a minute,
And
50 seconds, and connect with folk. How do you get those vocals across over something, a guitar riff that's like playing these 16 notes with the drummer playing the bass but the 16 notes too, and you got a vocalist doing it. It's really, some work put into it, I think people sit and think about music, regardless of its style, in the same way, like, let's say John Coltrane, had done, when he would go up into a room and just really, work on a piece of music or a body of music for a period of time and then come down. I find artists in the Afro-Punk and black rock and any quirky art form that we develop spend a lot of time on what they're doing. So it has a very important role, I think, in the canon of Black history music.
I would say the role is, especially for the younger generation or for people who don't know about the original movement, showing the many variations of being Black for the first time ever, maybe. It's not the Soul Fest. It's not the Jazz Fest. It's not Coachella because we can't get in Coachella. I know 3 Black people that play there, maybe, who aren't mainstream, who aren't Beyonce. I was gonna say I know her. I was like, they have, but no, but like as far as being a quirky Black person who isn't playing on BLS. Right. But you might still be doing something very soulful. Right. Here's a platform where you can be presented and people can see. I saw a lecture with Robert Glasper recently, and he made a really good point of feeling liberated that he could be himself and wear his street clothes and still be respected as a jazz musician. And that's a huge thing. So that's like a next wave.
That is.
Like, you look at someone like D'Angelo, like, he brings a different style, even though he's giving you this extreme, to me, classic real R&B. He doesn't present that visually all the time.
Right.
But the authenticity is there. And I feel like with some artists at Afro-Punk, you can see that. With some.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
So it's very important for that. With that said, what do you guys think about the idea that Black people embracing the elements of the counterculture? Does that mean, is that described as Afro-Punk, or is that just us being Black and expressive?
I think that's just us being Black. I think, something similar to what you had said earlier about this idea about Black existence is a punk existence. We've operated in just our way and our being counter to what has been set up as the norm for culture for this place and this space, and that norm being whiteness. Right. We've always operated outside of that. What, you want me to show up at 10? I mean, at 8, I'm showing up at 10. Right. I'm gonna straighten my hair, but I'm gonna throw a wave in my comb. Right. I think we've always kind of, have existed outside of those boundaries. And so I think that, like you were saying, it's us being Black.
Yeah.
It's just us being Black and us embracing the many spectrums, as you spoke to earlier, of what that Blackness can look like.
Right.
Yeah.
I think because Afro-Punk is such a commercial idea now for mainstream people outside of the counterculture, when they look at us, they assume we're Afro-Punk. Like, oh, you must go to Afro-Punk. Oh, you must know about it. But they know the Vogue Times Magazine version. They don't know the Delancey Street version. They don't know the skateboarding in front of band version. So for people to, like, it goes back to the thing where, like I was saying, seeing like young kids with metal shirts on. My band, the 1865, opened for Dave East, and he's like a huge hip hop artist. We're playing a sold out show to a room of like 17-year-olds, and a bunch of them had metal shirts on. And Sasha was like, hey guys, we're not hip hop, but I see a bunch of you out there with your AC/DC shirts and whatever. So we just want to let you know we're black and we play instruments and we're here to play for you. And this is what rock and roll is. And nobody left the room. It was kind of incredible. So I think there is a thing happening where people see the visual idea of Afro-Punk and the fashion, and it's fun. It's fun to be able to express yourself and have orange hair even though you're not punk, and walk outside and not feel like you're gonna get a beat down like we used to. But at the same time, it's a trend, and I think it's just a blurry line of like another way to be packaged, where like our generation doesn't want to be packaged. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think just to the embracing of it, has to include that the history, the lineage, and making that connection, because sometimes it's a way of dismissing things by saying, oh, that's that new stuff,
Right.
That's new, and this is going to pass, come to pass, and that belittles it a lot of times, and I think in embracing it, we have to make those connections to where it stems from, so that it has history, it has roots, foundation, and it knows that it's got some backing, behind it, and I think that's crucial.
Yeah, and I think even the idea that it could be fashion now, it's not necessarily a bad thing because fashion shifts.
Yes.
So the idea of where you've got kids, although I can't imagine the future where nobody's wearing band t-shirts, but like 10 years, 15 years from now, the concept of what Afro-Punk is in 2019 won't be the same.
True.
And we might, it might be a whole other, they might go the opposite way where suddenly they're wearing very uniform, almost square clothes you would kind of consider nowadays. But I do think that, like you said, the idea that they didn't leave, that they kind of stayed there and like, all right, we'll give this a try, I think kind of goes to the openness where I felt like years ago it was purely aesthetic. Now I think just because the culture has kind of gotten flatter, that they're willing to kind of say, all right, let's give this a try.
Right.
I'm not going to really hate on it. It's not really outside. I think people are kind of new into, and maybe it could be because the idea of where everything is kind of formulaic and very well curated and everything's kind of online. It's like, all right, I'm here in this live show. Let me experience what's happening in front of me. I won't judge it now. I'll just take it in as it is.
Right.
Yeah. And my question with that, with the young kids who are out here wearing the AC/DC t-shirts, because I see it and it's like, I know you don't know what AC/DC is, which is fine. But how do I move you, especially if you look like me, to move from wearing an AC/DC t-shirt to wearing a Funkadelic t-shirt?
Right.
You know what I mean? What is it? What is that bridge? And it may be this dedicated, Afro-Punk station or this really deep study. How do we get that movement to shift? Because I still think that there's a lot of language around Black rock music that it's not Black music.
Exactly.
That a uphill battle that we are still trying to climb.
Oh yeah.
And it's not even just black music. I last year went to Movement Festival in Detroit, which is the home of basically techno.
Right.
And it's crazy to me how you've got these DJs going to Las Vegas and getting paid literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's just like you don't see, like even Detroit, the lineup was 95% white. And it's like, how are we in Detroit, a black city, listening to Detroit techno. And it's still all white? And I think is the idea, hopefully, and I don't know, hopefully the algorithm will work in our favor. I think unfortunately now it's like, all right, you like this kind of music, we'll play to you this way. And I'm hoping that the algorithm will be like, maybe at a certain point, if you let the algorithm play for an hour or two, it's like, all right, now we'll start giving you, we'll bring out the crates. And I'm hoping that'll kind of eventually happen.
Has the Black rock aesthetic been hijacked?
Yes I mean, it has. I mean, going back to the idea of the Metallica T-shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at a point where neck tattoos aren't anything weird. I saw Vans with studs on them being sold.
Right.
Like these aesthetics are they're just there now and they're part of the culture.
Right.
And like I said, it's hard. For somebody who I felt it's a little self-conscious about being a punk, it's kind of cool to kind of see it be mainstream. Now the idea is, and like you pointed out, are we bringing it back so that way the originators get credit? Are we bringing it back so that way even the people who are doing it now get credit, that they're being recognized,
right?
And let's say that the genuine artists are kind of rising to the top. And like I said, I think all we can do is be hopeful, because then at the other side is being cynical, where it's like it's kind of a wrap. And I think even Afro-Punk, even if it could be a watered down form today, this didn't exist 10 years ago. Like it's still a vibe, it's still a space, like you pointed out before, that didn't exist. And I'm thankful for what it is. And I can only hope that over the years, over time, it'll just get more and more authentic, or at least they have no choice. They'll eventually run out of having and I love Erykah Badu, but Erykah Badu play every year.
Yeah.
And eventually they got to dig a little deeper and start bringing more people out there, just because, at a certain point we've got to go deeper into the well.
Yeah.
And I think, knock on wood, that it's inevitable.
You have a lot of faith. Not negative,
I heard she coming back next year.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think I went to Afro-Punk maybe 4 years ago, and I just told my friend, they should just call it the Black Alternative Fest, because it's, again, the biggest black music festival in America, and at the time it was free. And I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with the fact that it's still called punk, and the punk isn't respected. But the good thing is there are other festivals now that have been inspired by the original spirit of Afro-Punk. And bigger artists are starting to look at those festivals. So that's my optimism for the future, is those communities will grow, and we can support them and give them exposure.
Where are some of those places? Shout them out.
Punk Black in Atlanta, who also now travel, they're going to be in DC in July. They came here last year, they'll be here again in August. Break Free Fest, I think they're in DC. Gingtona's in the Pit in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, nice.
Decolonize Fest in London with our homeboy Savada, Yinka. There's at least 6 or 7 new alternative black festivals growing, because kids don't want to feel commercialized, and they want to feel seen, and they want to see their peers there. So that to me is the good thing about the backlash. But I don't think that Afro-Punk needs to stop. I just feel like it's not punk anymore, but it still has a good purpose.
Yeah.
Imagine, my neighbor took her 14-year-old daughter there for the first time last year. She grew up hearing us play music in the kitchen when she's supposed to be asleep. Finally, she's old enough to go and see other brown girls who look like her, feel comfortable and get exposed. Yeah. It was amazing. So for that, I think it's still really good.
Yeah, the whole idea about representation, you need to see yourself there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
We'll have to give the term punk up now. We have to change something different.
Well,
it's been co-opted. We've got to find a new way to call the subculture.
But let's not say it too loud. It's not co-opted. But let's all just whisper it under the table and we just walk out.
Well, the irony there is that here we have this Afro-Punk festival that's sort of gentrified and everything. The fact that it's been now becoming more, in a funny way, inclusive of all these other black folk, it sort of starts, in a funny way, can make that connection that, all these things are connected. So there's that side of it.
There is. I feel like some of those bigger artists saw the good in the mix of aesthetics and wanted to be down also. I want those kids to see me. I want to be cool. I don't want to just be playing stadiums. So that's another good thing. I keep thinking about what Tamara Kali said in the movie, though. when she was talking about getting black people to show up at shows. And she was like, white people will always show up because everything we do is cool. You don't have to fight to get them to come anywhere we are. It's like, we got to get each other to show up. And I feel that way about the little festivals. Like, I know white people going to the small festivals that aren't commercial. Like, when we were in Atlanta, I was like, there's white kids here. How do they know about this? Like, they just know. They do the work and find it. So we want our kids to do the same thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's always hiring because I remember even going out because I still go to a lot of like regular punk rock metal shows, and even though there's been more brown faces, thankfully, at times it kind of gets lonely where you show up and it's just like there's a big venue, St. Vitus in Greenpoint.
Oh, I know St. Vitus.
I love St. Vitus, but it's like I go to St. Vitus, it's like me and the other guy, and thankfully nowadays a lot of other women also. But it's like there's three of us there, and we always give each other the head nod just in case.
Yeah. Hey, what happened to him?
Yeah, it's like, all right, let's make sure we all check on each other. And like you said, it's the idea of where they'll always be there, and I'm hoping it'll kind of. But then again, I it's like I'm trying to be positive. I'm hoping that eventually that those like the black kids will eventually, and I think they are. It's something where there's a rapper I follow called Pink Sifu, who's an underground rapper, and he was like, oh, I'm trying to go punk rock band. He's like, who y'all out there playing instruments, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And even though on surface it's like, he's not about this life, quote unquote, it's still cool where he's like, oh, I want to start a punk band, yada yada yada. And I think that we can make the argument about how a lot of the kids now, the SoundCloud rappers, have some punk energy to what they do, like a Rico Nasty. But I think the idea of cool is kind of becoming something where, since the cycle is so quick as far as branding, and I hate those terms are concerned, that I'm hoping the kids will turn out just so they could claim to be the first one on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, be like, I'm out here, yada yada yada, doing all this cool stuff. What y'all doing for your lives? So.
Exactly. I mean, the kids that I used to babysit now go to Afro-Punk, and they go to all ages shows. Like, they go to like the Man's Thrasher Festival. I'm like, I used to carry your pit. You're in the pit. Thank you for joining AURN Digital's Black Rock Roundtable. Tune in next time.